Welcome back to another GeekaWhat video, and this is part 3, where I'm going to benchmark and show you the performance of this build. And let me start off by saying I was very impressed. So this is part 3 of my £800 and $900 build guide, and before the build and the benchmarks commence, I'd just like to flick this round to first show you the build, just up there, and also show you the monitor I'm going to be using for benchmark purposes. This is the AOC G24 60pf. It's a 144Hz FreeSync panel, which you can't quite see, however, that's what the benchmarks are going to be on. If the frame rate does exceed 144Hz, it's because I'm not limiting the frame rate to the monitor, and VSync won't be turned on, and instead FreeSync will be turned on because it's a FreeSync monitor. Anyway, let's put me in the top corner, let's put the benchmarks down here, and I'm going to talk about a few notable points during this build that are worth keeping in mind. For 1440p gaming, the 4GB frame buffer on the R9 380X was definitely needed. There's no point in going for a 2GB card if you're going to get a 380X. Even for 1080p and turning textures up, getting a 4GB 380X is crucial, a very key. It's also worth noting that going for the CPU we went for, it was very important to get an aftermarket cooler. The 8370 does come with AMD's new Wraith cooler, however, whilst that is a superb stock cooler and whilst that is innovation, if you do want to overclock, I highly recommend going for AMD's FX 8370 with a Hyper 212 Evo or something like that. Doesn't need to be a liquid cooled liquid cooled solution or a really big beefy like Dark Rock Pro 3. The Hyper 212 Evo or the Hyper 212 Extreme, I think the new one, either way is fine, and they're nice and cheap. A couple of also notable points: if you want to go for a smaller case, feel free. That's an ATX full tower, and I really wouldn't change that case because it is so nice and so great to build in. Easily the best case I've ever worked with. It is a bit on the big side, so if you did want something smaller, that is worth keeping in mind. That's basically all I have to say about that, and now that the gaming benchmarks are finished, let's put me back down here like so, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the editing performance before I move on to the special announcement at the end of this video. So, look, editing performance, how was it? Now, the editing performance in Premiere Pro and Adobe Media Encoder, so that's a standard piece-by-piece edit with a few visual effects and that kind of thing, was very good. You see the CPU core utilization, where every core gets used, and that's a really good thing about this CPU. Having 8 physical cores, if I can count to 8, having 8 physical cores is way better than 4 hyper-threaded and 4 physical cores. It's something that you might get, for example, on an Intel Core i5 6600K. Not to say that this chip is stronger than an i5 6600K, but for editing, I definitely prefer this AMD CPU. Having a cooler on there for something like editing is also very important, and you will notice in gaming, you tend to have Core 0, Core 2, Core 4 and Core 6 tend to be used more than the other cores because it's only using those bulk 4 cores. For something like After Effects, however, this PC does slip behind. Now, why does it slip behind? When in Premiere Pro and Adobe Media Encoder rendering out and editing footage, you will actually use the CPU and the RAM and the GPU. The GPU is a big one when it comes to editing, transcoding and rendering. After Effects, however, only uses CPU and RAM, and only having 8GB of RAM in this build did stump it up a little bit. It is worth noting though, if you're doing Premiere Pro in 1080p and 1440p, you'll be absolutely fine. I've even done a bit of 4K editing, and if you're going to do After Effects, you may want to stick to 1080 and 1440p, especially at 30 frames per second, because you have to remember, if you're editing in 60 frames per second or creating visual effects in 60 frames per second, you are rendering out twice the pixels in comparison to 30 frames per second. But that's the editing performance. I was very happy with the gaming performance. We've got some stunning footage. Now I'm going to roll a montage of some synthetic benchmarks while I head back to that top corner, and then I'm going to talk about the special announcement. that's the synthetic benchmarks. You can easily compare those benchmarks to other people with other builds. Loads of people use those synthetic benchmarks. However, the real world ones are a bit more sort of comparable, if you wish, because they're easier to relate to. Synthetic benchmarks, at the end of the day, are just a number. You're never going to really end up, rendering out some sparkly ball or going through something with aliens and stuff like that. Now for the special announcement. And the special announcement isn't what people think it is. I'm going to try and do this 3-part series every single month. I'm trying my very, very best to get my hands on some other parts and that kind of thing. I'm trying, but the next couple of weeks are quite big weeks for me. So I'm going back to school. I'm going back to school the day after this video's up, and I've got school for a week as normal, and then I've got a week of just mock exams. So that's like the exams before the real exams, and they like give you an idea of what you should get, what you should improve on. So as you can imagine, I'm spending next week when I haven't got exams, and then the week of exams sort of revising and then doing the exams. So what does that mean? No videos? Nah. I've been working my absolute ass off over here doing a load of PC builds, got a load of them rendered. You notice my $200 build, kicked it off yesterday with a storm. That's gone down really well. So drop a like rating on that and go and watch that in the cards section, either here or here if you haven't already. I don't know which side. So yeah, go and have a look at that, and I'm just going to be doing 2 weeks of just solid PC builds. I'm going to try and do a PC build like most days, every other day. I think it's going to be, I might mash it up with a bit of tech topics videos where I talk about tech and possibly some part reviews as well after that. What you doing? It's just going off. Doesn't Captain America just look badass? Anyway, yeah, I'm going to do 2 weeks of just PC builds, then I should be back on the grind as normal, doing a load of reviews. I've got a very, very exciting Crossfire video coming up, actually. Possibly a series, possibly a build guide, I don't know. But I'm going to be putting, I'm not going to spoil it actually, but I'm going to be putting 2 AMD GPUs together in harmony in a PC. And then as soon as DirectX 12 comes out, I'm going to be doing some very, very exciting stuff with having a machine that can both edit videos and game at the same time, with a little bit of virtualization as well. Fingers crossed for that. So that wraps it up for this video. Make sure to drop a like rating and subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to see more of these, make sure to tweet this video, Snapchat it, Instagram it, Facebook it, Pinterest it, the lot. Share it about, and yeah, I'll see you in the next GeekaWhat video.